Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got a new video for you guys today. As you guys have been seeing on my channel, there's been a lot more Final Fantasy XIV content, and there's still going to be more to come. But today I thought I'd do something a little different. So this channel started off as a reaction channel, so I thought why not combine the two kinds of videos that I've been doing lately. Today we're going to be checking out a video from another content creator named Preach Gaming. This actually came out 5 days ago. The video is called Was Endwalker a Failure? Expansion Retrospective. So real quick, the big reason I want to do this is because I have seen, with me getting back into 14, I've seen a lot of content creators talk about how bad Endwalker was. I personally was a fan of Endwalker, and I saw a small snippet of this video and thought it'd be a good idea to put it on the channel and give you guys my thoughts. So, you guys enjoy the video, drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Let's jump in and check it out. Okay, so I saw like the first minute of this, and he basically makes his own intro out of Endwalker's intro. Hence why he's using the music right now. It's pretty dope. Because you know how the Endwalker opening, it's the camera panning up of you in the cloak. Even all the bro, whoever he got to edit this, top tier. Like that's fire. I wish I could do that.
Let us all drink in how monumental a task Endwalker is for Creative Business Unit 3. I doubt that many people watching this right now were there that day that Yoshi P launched his nuke at the game, eradicating it to bring from those ashes a realm reborn. 11 years ago, August 2013 is when this fresh journey begun, and now it must come to an end. And I imagine that most of you watching this who joined later were told over and over again when your friends or colleagues were trying to entice you in, story, story, story. This story is so beloved, so cared for that you have to enjoy it.
When my buddy first introduced me into Final Fantasy XIV, I was still big on playing Destiny, and it wasn't actually the story that enticed me into playing the game. Granted, that was a big factor. Like he told me about the story, but like he wanted to avoid spoilers in case I actually ever got into the game. He told me a couple things, like later stuff, things that like didn't matter, like the Warring Triad. You know how that's a side storyline. He mentioned that, and I was like, I guess that's cool. What did it for me, honestly, was the fact that all of my friends stopped playing Destiny, and I was basically playing solo, which is fine. But at the time, Destiny was doing really, really poorly. And that cinematic trailer with Bahamut. Being that I've been a Final Fantasy fan since I was 7 years old. I'm 33 now. It just seeing that, then seeing Odin, like hearing about all the different bosses, the references to other Final Fantasy, I had to check it out, and I'm glad I did because I fell in love.
It's going to be amazing. I rated Heaven's Ward and Shadowbringers as two of the top 5 RPG, and I'm not talking just MMO, RPG stories ever told in video.
Facts.
And now 11 years later, they have the task of bringing it all to an end. Advertised loud and clear for all to know, Endwalker is going to bring it all to a conclusion and move the game in a new direction. This is exciting and terrifying. The story they're concluding is responsible for so many tears, laughs, memories, theories, and never-ending discussions, forming one of the most loyal fan bases of all time. FF14 is known for its incredibly welcoming, heartwarming community and friendly atmosphere. However, disrespecting the main story quest, not loving one of the scions, one of the main characters, and that super friendly, welcoming fan base is likely to burst into your home at Christmas.
I have heard that. What's the term they use? Toxic positivity, where they're so positive until you go against their opinion, and then it just becomes a mess. I've seen it a couple times with the Final Fantasy XIV community, but personally, I've had nothing but positive experiences.
And set the whole thing on fire. Endwalker. This one's tricky because Endwalker is essentially two parts. You've got the beginning, which is your MSQ, and then you've got your second half, post-MSQ, the new journey, the new path. As such, whether you like this side or this side, opinions are going to vary wildly. Some people like both. Some people like this bit.
Real quick, my opinion on the MSQ. I liked Endwalker, but I also felt like Endwalker could have been two different expansions. Not even because of the post story, but like the way they had set up for Fandaniel and Xenos, and the way it just ended with Zodiac super early into the campaign. The MSQ, and then the way it transitioned into this whole thing with Medion, who came out of nowhere. She had no build up whatsoever, and she's just all of a sudden our big bad that's supposed to end the series. I had heard that it was originally supposed to be two different expansions, and they ended up got rushed into pushing it together. I'm not sure why, but you can definitely feel where that divide was, because the expansion doesn't actually take off until you kill Zodiac. But they could have definitely given Fandaniel and Xenos more character development. Like, that could have turned into a whole expansion. But that's neither here nor there. As for the post-MSQ, maybe it's because I played Final Fantasy IV, but I loved it. I was immediately interested in Zero, being that she was, the Void Scent that Xenos had subjugated to get his Reaper powers. And, like, we cured some of her corruption, letting her regain her sense of self. And then everything leading up to the final boss. Some of the bosses were good. Like Barbariccia was nuts. Rubicante was cool. Golbez was like one of my favorite trial boss fights. Zeromus was whatever, but that's fine. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. And then the level of hype I felt when Zero turned into a paladin, it didn't even click with me that she was supposed to be Cecil. Until my buddy pointed it out, and I was like, oh my god, because Cecil went from being a Dark Knight to being a Paladin. Like, I liked it. I know it was very different, but like, the main story ended with the MSQ. Now we have to start something new. And imagine if they had tried to stretch, what was it, 5.5? 6.55, where they led up into Dawn Trail. Imagine if they had tried to expand that over the entire patch content. I don't know if the story could have been as good.
And some people don't like this bit. And then that's going to lead to a lot of frustration and disappointment with parts of the game. And we'll get to that bit shortly. Let's get into the low poly grapes and male Vieira the expansion launched with. It would be hard to find many who actively dislike the MSQ, or dislike this one, which in and of itself is phenomenal. Media in general is...
I loved the MSQ when it was the MSQ. The only thing I didn't like about the MSQ had nothing to do with the storyline. It was just all of the dead time. All of the time of running back and forth, the follow missions, like everything that was just like almost like pseudo length. Like it made it feel longer, but it just felt like so much filler time. Like you were just in between waiting for the next big thing to happen, which I know happened a lot in like ARR and whatnot. But I never felt that way with Shadowbringers. And even barely with Heaven's Ward. Hell, even Stormblood. It just felt like everything was moving at a better pace, where I felt like Endwalker was paced really, really poorly. Like, its high moments were really high, but like its boring moments were really fucking boring.
Noun for not satisfying its audience with their conclusions. It's a problem spanning multiple genres and the whole array of storytelling mediums, from TV to video games, from Game of Thrones to Lost, and from Lost to Seinfeld. The end of an era is often not what audiences expected or desired or dreamt up, and can leave them with that lingering frustrations of how they would have ended it. Endwalker surpassed these expectations, with most conversations arguing as to whether it was better than Shadowbringers. Was it one of the best stories ever told or not? Even deeper than that, did the Endwalker MSQ simply make Shadowbringers even better? We've discussed it in detail, but Meteion for me never quite matched Emmett's Cell, despite her and Hermes having clear sympathetic values just as Emmett did. She's so blatantly going to be the antagonist from her very first interaction that it didn't have me waiting for her overall character development, just her turn to the eventual dark side.
Nobody beats Emmett Silk as far as the villains in Final Fantasy XIV. I'm sorry, he was great, but personal bias aside, I had no idea Meteion was going to be the villain. I did not see that coming a mile away. But then again, I also didn't expect the expansion to take the sharp left that it took, especially once we got to Elpis.
Elpis was a surprise no one could have expected. The relationship explored of Emmett, Vanar, and Hythlodaeus is a highlight for everybody.
I love Hythlodaeus.
For me, is utterly outstanding in its simple yet soul-crushing portrayal of a once great society reduced to a shell of them former selves.
The scene when one of the Alamegans gives Euless, I think it was soup, after, they had been cold and starving for so long, and he just breaks down, that actually brought me to tears. That was one of the most emotional moments for me, seeing that Garlemald basically lost everything, and while they tried to hold on to their pride, even after all the cruelty they did, one of their enemies could still just offer them a hot meal. And just watching it all hit Euless, that got me in my feels. And then right after that was, the whole thing with Anima. It was wild.
Defeating Zodiac, the long-renowned big bad, so early, completely threw people's fan theories into shambles.
Yep.
They had plenty of time to roll along with the actual ending without constantly waiting for their fan theories to come true. Remarkably clever story writing and pacing, almost perfectly designed for such an invested audience, especially those who have written the ending of this tale in their heads months, if not years ago. Loporritz gave everything a much-needed levity.
I hated the Loporritz.
Of story threads that have been hot community topics.
I know it's gonna get me yelled at, but
parents, no doubt,
I cried.
People into despair of Meteion herself.
I cried.
As the whispers played on the Warrior of Light's final footsteps of the MSQ, and the ending of this decade-long journey was in sight, it would be difficult for anyone to argue that CBU3 over-delivered on expectations. If this review ended there, then Endwalker would deserve an S rank for its story alone. But as with all MMO journeys, it doesn't end there. It shouldn't be discounted. The additions of Reaper and Sage, super well received. People really like it.
I tried to get behind Reaper. Aesthetically, it's a beautiful looking job, and at high level, it can be a lot of fun. But the low level experience for it kind of ruined it for me because it was just too damn simple. Even at full power, it's still pretty simple, and it wasn't for me. But Sage, I fucking love Sage. Sage almost turned me into a healer main because I had so much fun with it.
And they made good choices with this. Changing Alphinaud to a Sage immediately brought him a more maturity and made the one super nerd who was painting naked pictures of Y'shtola a little bit cooler, right?
I had already started messing with Sage when this happened in the story, so I was super surprised and I was wicked happy about it. The part of the game where you actually have to play as Alphinaud, where you swap between Alphinaud and Alisei, when I got to play as Alphinaud, I was like, I know how to play this job, and it just got me super excited.
And also it helps out Xenos. Reaper is a badass job. It simply is. And Xenos is a character with a mixed reception. I'm a Xenos lover. He can be combat sexual with me all the time, but not everybody feels the same way, right? And Reaper gave him a new lease on life and a new flair. But here, my friends, here is where that journey takes a fork. Because now we are unfortunately all suffering, ladies included, from post-nut clarity. The Hydaelyn Zodiac storyline has come to an end, and the shininess is wearing off. Everybody will always tell you when a new MMO is coming out it's generally always a good thing to jump in. Even for the price of buying a new game, you're probably going to get 2 or 3 months out because new jobs, new quest lines, new side quests, new this, new that, everything's shiny, new raids, new things to explore, and all that fun. But then, depending on the player, a couple of months down the line, sometimes it's longer, you start to see the details. And that's when things change. So let's get the post-MSQ out of the way now before we get down to the nuts and bolts. The callback to FF4 was great. It's my favorite. It had so much potential twists and turns with Golbears, Zero, Cecilia, and CBU3 did plenty to push that speculation.
I liked Zero.
Really going on. Its downfall was that it didn't, and could never, ever carry the weight of the previous MSQ editions because the grim darkness of Zodiac and Hydaelyn was finished. Filler is a word that gets tossed around plenty in regards to the post-MSQ of Endwalker. Just something to tide people over until Dawn Trail and having no bearing on the big picture. Personally, I find this ridiculous. We don't know what the big picture is yet, and to suspect the story writers of FF14 of all people don't know what they're doing is really dismissive. Zero and Golbears fall into the same box as the Warriors of Darkness all those years ago.
Yeah, because the Warriors of Darkness made their appearance in Heaven's Ward and didn't actually, come to fruition until 2 expansions later. And I'm hoping something like that happens with Zero. Like, when we left the first, they were on their way to recovery. Right now, the Void is a mess. Like, sure, they have Zero now who has the power of light, but she's the only one. So they have to figure out a way to flood, the Void with light if they're going to ever rebalance it. But I liked Zero so much, I wanted her to stick with the Scions. I know the Scions broke up, but I wanted her to be part of the main cast, and I was actually upset that she didn't get to stay. So I'm hoping that, maybe an expansion or 2 down the line, they go back to the story of the Void. Maybe we finally, try and actually help the Void. Maybe we'll get something with Golbears and Zero actually, doing stuff alongside of us. That'd be really, really cool.
Time Day 2 seems somewhat throwaway and pointless, but we all know how that turned out. I doubt anyone here thinks Fordola and Arenvald aren't going to...
I remember at the I'll rewind that a little bit just so we don't miss what he's talking about. Arenvald and Fordola. Originally, the Warriors of Darkness, I thought, was just a way to write out Minfilia. Like, this is Minfilia exiting from the game. And then we end up going to the first and have one of the best expansions we ever had. If not the best.
Time Day 2 seems somewhat throwaway and pointless, but we all know how that turned out. I doubt anyone here thinks Fordola and Arenvald aren't going to make their presence known again in the future, but as their arc takes place amongst the old story arc, it's not considered filler by anyone. The post-MSQ was used, in my opinion, to get the story and development of what will be important characters done now, so that later it's not needed in the middle of the main story. In Zero's case, we now have a character that has been completely altered by witnessing the positive actions of the Scions on the general populace. No doubt, when the Scions doubt themselves, they will rely on the once closed off and distant Zero to remind them of what they've done and their true path. I don't believe that any story told in FF14 is wasted, and as of now, and at least since A Realm Reborn, I have no reason to believe that that's the case this time. That's not to say that I don't understand why people didn't feel as strongly about it as they had in the past. After all, the emotional weight of Endwalker, it took a decade to achieve. A fresh tale needs time to find its legs. However, beyond all those things, the biggest criticism we've seen of Endwalker, certainly now, is that it lacks that daily grip, that reason to log in just to play. And we've seen this from content creators and a lot of the community being outspoken.
This video right here is why I wanted to give my thoughts on the game. I saw Zepla's video saying that Endwalker is the worst expansion that she played, and all the stuff that, all the issues she gave with. And I'm assuming he's going to go over them, and I'll give my thoughts on the subjects as we go through them.
That there's just not much to do compared to what I used to do in other expansions. Now, a lot of people have said, there's a lack of content. So let's take a closer look at that. Welcome back to school. Let's consider expansion content and what's in there. The raids, they're all there. In fact, Pandemonium had as good a story as we expect from Omega, Alexander, Eden, it doesn't matter.
I thought Pandemonium was good. Some of the boss mechanics were a little simple. If you guys saw my videos, I went through all 12 and had a lot of fun with them. Some of them were really easy. Some of them were actually pretty difficult. Pandemonium, the namesake boss, was one of the most unique bosses I've ever fought. And the fucking tree. Fuck the tree. How do I, like, where would I rank this compared to the other raids? I would say I liked it more than Omega, but less than Eden.
Well, all the raiders then started to encounter another problem. You see, Final Fantasy XIV, as I'm sure many of you know, works on a very homogeneous job style. Yeah, they have slightly different resources and different abilities, but overall, the big picture, they all kind of work the same. And that allows CBU3 to make some very simple decisions. They can balance things way, way easier. They don't have to worry about multiple talent setups, crazy gear setups, or anything like that. However, players do like having some nice differences between their jobs. When it came to the raiding, the biggest feedback I got from all the raiders was the horror of the 2-minute
meta
window. Now, if you're not a raider, this might not make sense to you. So we have 0, 4 minutes, and right in the middle, 2. So what's the 2-minute window? It's actually pretty simple. Cooldowns, big DPS cooldowns or tanking cooldowns or whatever you have on your character are designed to be used sparingly, right? You use them whenever they're available and they give you a big boost to your character's performance. The problem was in Endwalker, and became even more obvious with the ultimates, so we had Omega and DSR, is that these cooldowns do tremendous amounts of damage. And in an MMO,
because they all stack and they all multiply as you add them, putting a bunch of party buffs all active at the same time, the same window, it shoots your damage way up. That's what the whole point of the 2-minute window is, because almost all of the cooldowns for every job that has offensive cooldowns and some defensive cooldowns have a 2-minute time limit. I don't hate the 2-minute meta. It, like, a lot of people complain because it homogenizes the jobs too much. But they're trying to make it where every job can do the content. And some jobs just weren't played if they couldn't fit, you know, in a certain, if they couldn't line up properly, jobs would get left behind. While the simplicity of the jobs is definitely there, I feel it a lot. Like Gunbreaker, they reduced some of the buttons to, like, I think they reduced the Gnashing Fan combo to one button. Summoner is butt fuck easy. You guys heard me complaining about Reaper and how simple Reaper is. It really only does anything in the burst window. But it's just like, I would be okay with the jobs being so simple, but we need the fights to be harder. So don't get me wrong, some of the raids can be a little tough, but once you figure them out, that's it. Like, they need to, I think if they're going to make the jobs this simple, they need to turn up the difficulty on, like, across the board. Trials, raids. Like, obviously we've got the ultimates, but not everybody can do the ultimates. We need, you know, the casual content, the mid-core content to actually be harder too.
when you put them all together, so let's say you have this window where your cooldowns will be up somewhere in there. In here, if you do things like my character does more crit, another character has a thing where the boss takes more damage.
This is just an example of how they multiply together.
Somebody else has a cooldown that gives you haste.
This is just an example of how they all multiply together
on top of each other. So you then multiply that by like 8 characters, and what you see is a DPS graph that suddenly goes like this. If you don't fit into this area, then in fact you're just becoming a detriment to the team.
It looks like he's trying not to laugh because he knew exactly what he drew.
Then it goes, or if your DPS cooldowns are here, you go, and this one gets shorter. And so what happened was,
bro, come on, you know what you were doing there.
Here got abandoned. And so CBU3 was presented with
that's just what I was saying.
This is a real problem when you have massive DPS checks on boss encounters and you can cut entire phases out of fights. Simple as that. And so they made the decision, we'll just make everybody 2 minutes. Now, why is that a problem? Because it also makes every single fight the same. It's all about 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And now every single raider will tell you that most of the planning goes into when do we use our 2 minutes. And it's tedious and it's tiresome. And that homogeneity that exists in FF14 may only get worse. Of course, we've got Pictomancer and Viper coming in Dawn Trail, and they're not very
I'm
good.
hyped for Viper.
However, if we look at some other content, the Beast Tribes, for example, when compared to the frustrations people have, the pets, the mounts, all the cosmetics were up to an S-class tier.
Yeah, I've heard the
So
Beast
let's
Tribes
take
for
a
Loports
look.
are really, really good.
Let's go somewhere a bit special and really find out about this lack of content. Welcome to all the things that make an expansion.
This is awesome.
Final Fantasy XIV say. Here we can really compare.
The crown now rests upon my head, and the first chapter of my legend.
Old expansions, new
Like,
expansions, and all.
can we appreciate how much effort was put into this? Like, he did not need to go this hard. This is cool, though.
Features that make them up. Let's start with one of the obvious ones people complain about with Endwalker, and that is the lack of a raid trial series. These would be your Wurlits, your Four Lords, and of course, your Warring Triad. Now, this didn't exist in Endwalker, or did it? Well, yes, it did, but they decided to make a change. They decided to split it in two. On the one hand, we had the bosses. And these were sent off to the MSQ. And you might wonder why. They were perfectly fine the way they were. They were unique, interesting stories, all leading to bosses. Well, the likely reason is, after dealing with a lot of MMO companies, just not enough people were doing them to justify the expense of creating them. A lot of people join FF14 and just play the MSQ and then log out. They don't even know, in some cases, that the raid series and extra stories exist. But what about the actual...
I didn't mind the bosses being part of the MSQ. Like, the only difference between this and the other expansions is that those bosses would have had their own storyline. So we lost out on a storyline. We still got the same number of bosses that we would have had in any other expansion. And they were still good fights.
Story element itself then, where did that go, Mike? Well, actually, this time around, it was moved over to Tataru. Her adventures and our adventures of visiting a lot of old faces.
I haven't even done the Tataru quest line, so there you go. I didn't even know about that. So we didn't lose anything. They just reshuffled it around. So rather than the way they make it sound, it's like if the boss fights had been in the Tataru storyline, we'd not be having this conversation.
Across Aetherius and seeing what they were up to and giving you that extra storyline to go along with. So the story and the raid series and the bosses do exist, but change in an MMO is very dangerous. People like what they like.
They like their formulas.
A lot of old elements came back to life. Hildebrand, who hadn't been seen for a while,
I hate Hildebrand.
brought back into the game itself. And of course, alongside that, much to the love of the community, the Blue Mage brought back as well.
I need to work on my Blue Mage.
But above that, new sparks were created. Criterion Dungeons. CBU.
Criterions are fire. The variant dungeons, like, that is fantastic content. But the rewards are ass. If I know they're doing more variant and Criterion dungeons in Dawn Trail, if they could just give us like some solid rewards that make us actually want to do it over and over again, I would be in there. The fairy mount is one of my favorite mounts in the game. I love Aloha Island.
3's answer to a lot of the West joining FF14 and demanding what they had seen in other games. Low group counts, really hard challenging content, and they delivered. The Criterion Dungeons did provide that, as well as still being suitable for casual players. However, no reason...
My favorite thing about it was the fact that you can go in with any party comp. Like, me and my friends went in with all DPS. I was a red mage, so we wouldn't need a res. And our Reaper was actually our tank. Like, I thought that was cool when we went through the variants. The Criterions, like, they were challenging, but it's just like, without proper rewards, why am I going to go and do that? I'll go through it once to get the clear, but why ever do it again?
Whatsoever to farm them. And then we had another new idea. Island Adventures. So exciting. In the FF14 world, we're getting the Stardew Valley Animal Crossing style simulator, and people were so excited. In fact,
I didn't do that.
were one of the things I was so excited for. I'd never tried those kind of games, but to do it in 14, sure, and I played the life out of it. This was the first time in 14 I've actively farmed something. But unfortunately, it very quickly turned into a spreadsheet simulator that none of us wanted. And it died, just as my love of it died. But one thing about Final Fantasy XIV and CBU3 is they're going to iterate and keep growing on it. More Criterion dungeons are coming, still no real reason to farm it. And we know that we're going to be traveling the stars and Dawn Trail with the next iteration.
That does sound cool as shit.
Adventures will be. And Endwalker didn't stop there. Ishgardian Housing. That joined us. We also got Data Center Travel.
I've actually used that.
That joined us as well.
I've used that to get raid teams.
To go along with it.
I have unlocked Eureka with those. I haven't done it yet.
Joined us as well.
I haven't played Crystalline Conflict yet,
Endwalker,
but I heard it's fire.
With it, as you can see, tons and tons of content and features. Several of them brand new. So when players are saying there's just not enough content, what exactly are they talking about? Well, we discussed the change of the norm in some cases. This is always going to be upsetting, but the big one people bring up is the relic grind, especially when compared...
I have thoughts on this. Alright. My buddy and I were talking about this the other day, about how we feel about this expansion. This expansion was definitely more catered toward the casual player. They made it really, really easy to catch up. The 24-mans, even the raids, were a lot less difficult, along with the jobs. So getting gear wasn't nearly as hard. The relic grind, because it was just a tombstone grind, you could be leveling up jobs, doing your dailies, and then you could just keep doing your dailies once you max out to get the tombstones to get your relics. You still have to get 6,000 tomes. I think you can get like 15 a week unless you like go out of your way to farm, like doing raids and stuff to get the actual tombstones. But it's still a little bit of a grind. It's not like the weeks and weeks and weeks of Eureka and Boja. But someone like me who works a lot, who can only play a couple hours a day, if that, I loved that it was just tombstones. I would come in, get my dailies, get a shitload of tombstones. Within a couple of days, I can get the next phase of my relic. Within like 2 weeks, I can have my level 4 relic. And don't get me wrong, I love the weapon grind when I can do it. It's just I normally can't do it. So like I started a bunch of weapons on Boja, never got to finish them. Whereas now, with the Mandeville weapons, I've got Gunbreaker, Sage, Monk, Samurai, Machinist, Red Mage. I think I'm on my level 3 Summoner, so I've already got 6 full weapons and I'm working on my 7th. And I'm planning on just getting all of them because while it is easy, I still do want some grind, so I'm going for all of them. Whereas with the other relic grinds, I didn't get to do any of them because I just didn't have the ability to finish them. And looking at the content from that point of view, a lot of the content seems like it was geared toward the casual. So that's probably why, a lot more of the advanced players were saying there's nothing to do. There's nothing they want to do.
To Eureka, and my personal favorite, Bosnia. At this point, we should talk about the elephant in the room. Final Fantasy XVI. Many have decried the team's...
I love that fucking game.
...is the reason for a big hole existing in 14's Endwalker. Yoshi P already has a very busy schedule, so adding 16 to his plate is definitely going to affect something. More clearly, Yoshi P made it very, very loud and clear he actively wanted people to be able to complete their favorite activities in 14 in a nice, timely manner in order to free people up to play 16. You might remember the live letter of him discussing reducing the gearing process for raiding for this exact reason. No doubt the relic grind was under similar scrutiny. In the past, it was common that your first relic would be relatively easily obtainable, but then collecting them all for all the jobs
I have that
will
one.
be a long-term endeavor. Endwalker has literally no long-term goals, and that is poison for the people who just want to play their favorite game. While it's easy to
Second
say,
stage look
hey,
better.
let's go play other games, including the game director himself, the reality is there are many people who just don't want to, and a monthly paid MMO should also be catering to those people. The Endwalker relic hunt was reduced to simply farming tombstones, not that many of them either, and just getting the relics given to you. Now this has a twofold effect. Firstly, obtaining them is not only easy, but also boring, as you aren't doing some niche, separate piece of content with its own pros and cons like Bosnia, but instead you're just doing dungeons and journals as you would ordinarily do. And
See, yeah, this is what I mean. Like, I wouldn't say it was boring because you're still doing the grind. Because you would normally be doing the grind. You know, you hop on, you do your dailies to get gear, to get things, and it's just like you're getting more rewarded for doing the things you were already going to do. As someone, like I said, who has a limited amount of time to be able to play, it felt good knowing that these were actually an attainable goal for me.
hunting across the plains. Secondly, it makes the relics mundane. Nothing is special if everybody has it.
Tell that to someone who didn't do any of the Hildebrand. A friend of mine didn't do any Hildebrand, and it took him a couple days to get through the entire Hildebrand from A Realm Reborn all the way through Endwalker. There's your grind. I felt bad for what the hours he had to put in to just get through just the storyline that has almost nothing for you to do. I will say the Endwalker mission when you get to play as Godbird though, that was peak. Because he basically, turned into One Punch Man, and we got to go ham with him. It was a lot of fun.
Relic collections were previously a badge of honor for the day-to-day players. Seeing their jobs with the harder-to-grind relics felt so rewarding, and you knew that not many players could have achieved what you had done. Yet now, it means nothing. Back in World of Warcraft's Legion expansion, a weapon known as Ashbringer, a legendary sword that had its own fanfiction, crackpot theories, was suddenly just equipped by anyone who happened to play a paladin. All spectacle and mystery of the weapon was suddenly lost to the ether. For many, this was a gap in the game that nothing could fill, and while we could entirely shift the blame to FF16, it should be considered there are now so many jobs in the game that having huge long grinds for completionists is somewhat becoming untenable. There are 2 more jobs coming in Dawntrail. The next version of this relic content, which we know is coming, well, it may never be what you hope it would be.
I don't know what they're gonna do
As we
for
move
it next.
away from Endwalker, and as someone who wasn't looking to play it every single day, I have to say I had a blast. It's an A rank for me, but it had its problems. Criterion dungeons were great until they weren't. Island adventures were amazing until they weren't. But I'm still so happy to see that they kept trying new things while maintaining a lot of the old school things. But now we turn to Dawntrail. On which path will they take? I don't think anything will ever beat Shadowbringers for me. The post-MSQ had mixed reaction. So whatever they do to launch Dawntrail with, it has to be an absolute banger. But I have the utmost faith in their storytelling. I know for one that when it launches, I'll be getting my brush out and Pictomancing immediately. And then I'll do the MSQ a little later, after you guys have had your fill.
Yeah, it's probably what I'm gonna do too.
We're gonna have a good time.
Hell yeah.
I choose this way.
I like the little symbolism he did there too. Both paths lead the Dawn Trail, because we're all gonna find our own way to get there. that gave me a little bit of goosebumps because you know the end of the Endwalker trailer. That was cool.
And what you see is a DPS graph that suddenly goes like this.
See,
You don't see.
he knew exactly what he was doing there.
Here's two.
All right, this video's getting a like. That was awesome, and I'm gonna subscribe because I definitely would like to see more of this guy's content. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Endwalker, and how'd you guys feel about this video? I really enjoyed this video. I thought it was really funny and pretty insightful. And it's true, we did get a lot of content in Endwalker. Endwalker, I thought was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was the best expansion for me. That's still held by Shadowbringers. When it came to Shadowbringers, it's hard for me to find a fault in Shadowbringers. Maybe I could say the later patch content after 5.3, it started to go downhill a little bit, but everything else was great. The trial series, the raid, the story, like it was all top tier. If I had to rank it, I would probably put Shadowbringers at the top, Heaven's Ward. If we're talking story, Endwalker beats Stormblood for sure, but like I really like the trial series in Stormblood, and of course the raid was fantastic. But so they kind of fight for third place with A Realm Reborn at the bottom. Well, let me know what you guys thought about Endwalker. Let me know if you guys also thought that this expansion was geared more toward casuals. And I came back 4 months ago now, and I'm still not caught up. I still have plenty to do. Granted, I can't play as much as everybody else. I noticed that especially with the content creators, because they play so much, because you know it's their job to play, they're the ones running out of content. Me, I'm still playing catch up. I still have plenty of stuff to do, and I'm loving it. I haven't even finished leveling up on my jobs yet. But, of course, support Preach Gaming. If you guys want to check out his original video without my pausing, without my commentary during it, of course, link to the range will be down below. Give that video a like. Tell him what you thought of this. That video took a lot of work, and I thought it came out really, really cool. If you guys want to check me out on social media, those links will be down below. If you guys want to see me streaming on Twitch or YouTube, it'll be right here for YouTube. Twitch is twitch.tv/Zaphikel. If you guys want to come hang out on either one, my next stream will probably be Saturday night with another stream Sunday morning. So come swing by. Let's talk about it. But that's it for me. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.